Radio.
You are now in the realm of enlightenment and transformation, as brought to you by the Foundational Friday. Our core aim is to present and experience an opportunity for your soul to reascend to its place of origin while cultivating a healthier spiritual awareness and emotional maturity. The show serves as a free offering to the greater community and an addendum requirement for all our new spiritual training students. For all those listening, if you'd like to move closer to the calculations and fundamental understandings of the ANU order, be sure to pick up the book, Grasping the Root of Divine Power. If you desire a spiritual reading to help you map your current spiritual position in the face of your world and learn the greatest pathways for your fortune in this season, you can go to the SaduluHouse.com. That's SADULUHOUSE.com. You can also go to OrishaReligion.com to find out how you can become a student and member of the ANU Spiritual Order. That's OrishaReligion.com. Peace, everyone. Here we are again, another Foundational Friday, and I am Yuya Assaan-ANU, Chief Jegna of the ANU Spiritual Order. So pleased, as always, to be in the space with you, and especially delivering this subject on this precious Friday, where we are now tackling the idea and the concept of brainwashing. In truth, they say hindsight is 20/20. When I look back, I probably should have entitled the show Techniques and Methodologies of Brainwashing versus Mind Control, because too often I notice that the two are interchanged when they really shouldn't be interchanged. And we'll get into that. But firstly, I want to just get into my reasoning for wanting to even do this show. I felt it was an important subject. As I mentioned previously, I think on other shows and certainly in my book, that the mind serves as a cosmic gateway. So the mind is important. The head is important. The Oreo Day is very important. We have ideas, concepts, and theories and doctrine that are all focused, developed, and cultivated and specifically targeted to the human brain. So there's a lot of time and energy spent by many people, countless people, learning how your brain works, how to manipulate it, and how to use it for their own fortune and gain, or just for your own oppression, which ultimately is for their own fortune and gain. And one of the sad events that you find in many spiritual communities is that there's no emphasis, discussion, or concentration on the mind, albeit it's such a very important component to our spiritual work. Even if you are going through a process of repetitively trying to memorize your prayers or your affirmations or your steps of your meditations, you're doing that all within your mind. And your mind synthesizes whatever information that it takes in. And yes, the stimulus and the precursor to the mind or to thought is the spirit, but you can start with something good and destroy it. Very similar to our Yoruba concept of Iwa, which is character, right? And we are told that a bad ori, or a bad head, a bad mind, or consciousness, or destiny, can be cured, or we'll say balanced to a better space with good character. Well, the same thing can happen in reverse. One may have a good mind, but with poor character can ruin their destiny. So now let's look at it. If one gets very clean and good seeds from heaven, one is born with a good destiny, but takes in the wrong food, toxic food, into their mind, then what happens? They misshapen their destiny in the wrong way, just as we were mentioning before. So the mind is a very important tool to look at. It can be problematic for the most part. My personal feeling is that it causes more harm than good. But in this plane, in this third dimensional plane where things move really slow, we need it. So if we can correlate Esue with Set, the Kemetic deity, where we get Satan, where we also get Seth, if we can correlate Esue with Set as being a form of a way opener, but also being over the material reality, as we know when dealing with our root chakra, right? And within that root chakra lives Set, lives Esue, or Ilegba, as some are so familiar in calling him. So we know that Esue or Ilegba not only deals with dexterity, not only deals with the crossroads, not only deals and sustains the concept of segregation, which is choosing. Segregation is a choice. Either I'm going to be here or be there. So that's the segregation piece. But also, as many of us know, Ilegba or Esue deals with the concept of wit or intelligence. Okay, in our Kabbalic system, we have this at the Sephiroth Hod, H-O-D, Hod, which is that shining intelligence, that wit. So it's brain power, mind power. Esue is not only over our nervous system, but also over our mind power, our actual logical and linear intellect. And as I've told you in so many instances, when you're dealing with these archetypes, whatever they can give, so can they take away. Okay, so if Esue is over intellect and wit, then we have to also surmise that Esue can possibly function within and even affect one's own level of ignorance. Okay, or just the concept of being dumb. And I'm making this distinction between being dumb and being stupid. Okay. Stupid is when you know better but don't do better. Dumb is you just don't know. Or you can be dumbed down through mind control techniques, right? So in our Yoruba pantheon, we're often told about Esue's trickster potential, right? Sometimes you'll even see Esue depicted as a small child, grinning and playing at the crossroads, very similar to a Loki energy or Pan energy. These entities that sit at the crossroads and may even ask you a question to try to confuse you, and you have to answer correctly in order to gain passage to the next place, right? That's the Oni Bode aspect of Esue. Oni Bode means the gatekeeper. Okay, we saw this in the movie Thor with Idris Elba playing the character of Heimdall. Heimdall was representing that Oni Bode aspect of Esue or Ilegba. He was the gatekeeper, right? So, in that trickster capacity, what we're really saying here is that the mind can also play tricks on you when we see that projection into the intellectual, right? So I'm not saying that Esue just sits inside of your brain playing tricks. What I'm saying is that because Esue governs the energy of what we call intellectual thought, where we get this notion of the trickster is where we get the notion of also the mind playing tricks on us. Well, how are mind games played? Let's get into it. First off, let's kind of look at the definitions here. Let's look at some perceptual definitions. We have mind control, and then we have brainwashing, right? Now, brainwashing, the main difference between the two, mind control and brainwashing, is based on how we'll call the victim, or the one this procedure is happening to, how they perceive the predator, we're gonna call them, or the one doing the brainwashing, or the one attempting to control their mind. It's based on perception. Okay, so say for instance, if one was to be kidnapped, right, tied up, put into a room with no light, and tortured, and certain ideas would be constantly reinforced into their psyche. Okay, in this instance, the victim knows clearly that they're a victim, but over time, they could develop a sort of affinity with their oppressor. This is what we call Stockholm Syndrome. Okay, so they begin to identify with their oppressor, and in some instances even sympathize with them for having to go through the notions of oppressing and enslaving them. Okay, so this is clearly what we would call brainwashing. Okay, one is almost aware of the aggressive campaign in the beginning. Now, but we also have mind control, right? Mind control typically happens in a format where one has no idea that they are victims of mind control. Okay, we find this very often in what some like to call cults. Now, inherently, a cult is not a bad thing. A cult is a great thing, actually, because cult deals with culture. And like we have the occult dealing with things that are hidden. A cult is just a group of folks who have a common thread, a common acyclic in terms of their ideology and in terms of their culture. No problem there, right? But then you have those type of cults that are oppressive and that purposely block one's own mental and gateways. Going back to that brain being a cosmic gateway. Okay, they purposely block that. And there's certain ways and reasons they do it. And one of my greatest stimulus for doing the show is that I talk to a lot of different people from other systems, right? And it's, whether they be high level in that system or they're just starting out, or folks who are just part of different religions. And I see the techniques of mind control so prevalent often within certain systems and certain groups of people, and it's not always my way to speak on it. It depends on who the person is and if I feel that they can receive that information. But usually what I'll try to do is just ask a couple of questions. Those who have been at the hands of my teaching style, you know that it's very direct, and but even within this directness, I do use the Emotepian method, where I will ask questions in order to get you to arrive at your own conclusion. Right? So oftentimes I do that because if you just speak and preach to a person, a lot of times what you'll end up doing is emulating the same mind control that they are currently in or just coming out of. And in that, what I could do is I could create more disciples by doing that, or I could scare the person. Either way, that is not my intention. I want neither. I neither want disciples who have Yuya pom-poms and are chanting the virtues of Yuyaism. I don't need that, and I certainly don't want to be responsible for re-enslaving someone. There's a karmic responsibility that comes with enslavement of individuals that I really would never want to have to deal with. And on top of that, it's just not right to do. So I like to ask questions and, plant seeds in that way to help people to kind of, challenge themselves to the truth. Well, when you're dealing with a situation of mind control, this is greatly discouraged. First off, there's a couple of things that you'll find when you're dealing with mind control. The first thing is that one of the first methods of mind control is to dispute and refute everything that person comes to the door with, almost to the point of ridicule. Okay, so one may mention a book. They may say, hey, have you read, Get Your Mind Right by Joey Bag of Donuts? And you say no. And then they'll say, come on, you didn't read Get Your Mind Right by Joey Bag of Donuts? You got to check out Get Your Mind Right by Joey Bag of Donuts. It's amazing. Now, they're going to start going on and on about something that you've clearly said, I don't even know what you're talking about. I haven't read this book. Okay, so that's a way of humiliating you. In a sense, and a lot of times when you're dealing with mind control, it's a high level of humiliation. Okay, it's not only fear that's utilized, but also humiliation. One of the methods, again, that you'll see is not only immediately disputing everything that the person comes into the door with, you'll also find that there's an isolation that's encouraged between that person and their familial or even friendly social points of reference. So they'll immediately be told that they should start to create some distance. For instance, a lot of times with certain situations of mind control, when you go to meetings, they're usually held in remote places. And they might even be in remote places where there's no cell phone reception, there's no phone, there's no television, so forth and so on. But let's say if it's a Saturday meeting, right, and you come in on a Friday and it's like a whole weekend retreat, the actual meeting may only be a couple hours, but you're stuck in that space until it's time for you to go back, which may not be the Sunday evening. So what happens is that once you receive the first level of information, as opposed to being able to go back to your environment and reference it or understand it, you're surrounded 24/7 by the same members of that group who are under the same level of mind control, who are constantly reinforcing whatever was just said to you. You'll find that in these groups immediately there's also a move towards family kinship. One of the immediate things that you could do to see, you'll notice that there's a lot of touching. Okay, so you'll come into the door, and this is whether it's a church or a group or whatever, and immediately someone will put their hand on your shoulder, or a real classic one is they'll shake your hand and they'll take their other hand and put it behind your elbow. That's a technique. Okay, or they'll shake your hand and they'll put their other hand over your shoulder. While they're walking with you, they may put their arm around you, or they may even kind of rub the middle of your back. Okay, and what they're doing is they're getting you used to having your physical environment violated and intruded upon. They're creating a certain level of comfort there so that you can now be intruded. They also will put you in an environment that is completely unfamiliar with your current surroundings. Okay, now we're all dealing here with mind control, because mind control is a little bit more important. Brainwashing is as well, but mind control is something that happens on a social mass media level that's highly, and it goes highly unrecognized, which is its point. The whole point is for you not to know that you're actually being controlled. But you'll find this even in our ATR, African Traditional Religion groups, where people will come into the group, or the group may already have that feeling, with a certain level of stagnation, as well as crystallization, and a way of thinking or being. You'll find that whenever you go into certain elays or whatever community or spiritual houses, and there's a sense of superiority that's promoted amongst members, you immediately know you're in a place where mind control is being utilized. There's two things you can recognize in groups, okay? Top two things. If you don't remember anything from this session, remember these two things. The first thing is that the members of the group are encouraged to model and emulate the leader of that group, who is usually a sociopathic narcissist. Okay, meaning that this is a person who has no true ability to show feelings, emotions, fear, anger, whatever, but they've become a master at mimicking those emotions. They've even become a master at making you believe that they connect with you on every single level as it pertains to those emotions. So when they meet you, they immediately will ask you to run down your life story to them, while giving you very little information about themselves that, is not a part of public consumption. Okay, so once you run down your entire life story, they'll show you how they are the solution or the perfect mating and match for your current disposition. People who are sociopaths, they've mastered this ability because they don't have personalities like you or I, people who have really feelings and emotions. They only learn to mask them. And the thing about them is very interesting, is that they grow bored very quickly with that game. Okay, so you'll find that you'll come into a situation with them, and they'll lavish you with all this love and admiration and compliments, because they know that most people are pretty self-absorbed anyway. They've understood that about the human psyche. So most people, they want to be lavished with all that attention. They want someone to say, tell me about your life story, and you can sit there and ramble on for 3 hours, and they'll sit there and go, the entire time. Because that's just the type of fractured and, we'll say, unholy individual that Western society creates. Western society does not create healthy people. Western society creates people who are susceptible and fertile to mind control, because Western society is really built around mind control and violence. Okay, so you'll find that one thing, the members will emulate the leadership. They'll begin to dress like the leadership. They'll talk like the leadership. They'll walk like the leadership. When they have opportunities to present and speak, quote, or preach, you'll find that they do it exactly like that one leadership, that person. That's the first thing that you'll recognize, and then you'll also recognize this sense of superiority that they purport with members, as well as especially the leaders. So everyone else around you becomes completely discredited and disinvalidated in the eyes of the members. So you'll find this even in some traditional African religion, Elays. And I know a lot of you don't want to hear this, but I really don't care. So, because the show is free, if you don't want to hear it, turn it off. But the thing is, you'll find people who are in certain sects will say, well, you know, Lukumi's better than Santeria. Santeria is better than Lukumi. Well, the Yoruba now is not effective here on American soil, so you need to be a part of this. And the Kendom play is more stronger, but then the Palo is even better than the Voodoo. Everyone has this sense of superiority. Now, I'm not saying this amongst the religious practitioners. Okay, so let me get this real clear. I'm talking about certain individuals within those groups. This is how they begin to behave. The groups inherently were not designed with that creation, with that thought. When Santeria was created and conjured and manufactured for the advancement of the people who needed it at that time and who still need it, it wasn't manufactured so that it could be superior to anything else. It was manufactured really to include the things that were already present and to take it to the next level, which I think is a wonderful thing, right? And that really goes for all of the different systems, though people don't know that. People think that that whole purist ideology that they've taken on, that it has to be exactly how it was when it was created, was the intention of the creators, and that really wasn't. When you're dealing with African tradition and African spirituality, because there really is no religion, but when you're dealing with those concepts, you're dealing with ideas of advancement and evolution. And if you're not really a part of that, then you're not in the groove of things. Plain and simple. When I created our new spiritual order, it wasn't about creating a new religion. It was about creating a situation and a system where people could educate themselves about their own genius and educate themselves about the collective genius that exists in all of these different spiritual systems without having to express any direct allegiance to any of them. So many people who have asked to join my class, the first question they ask is, do I have to get initiated first? Everybody always asks that. Do I have to get initiated, either under me or just initiated? And of course the answer is no. No, not at all, because I'm not a proponent of initiation before education, unless you have, honestly, a life or death situation. And sometimes you might need that, but it depends on how it's read out. But for the most part, the majority of the time, people use their initiations as a way to, again, purport that same level of superiority without getting the education. Also, people have taken on the knowledge and the information that initiations are necessary for everyone. And that's a part of the brainwashing. Well, I should say that's a part of the mind control that's happening. Because you go into certain environments, you're going for a $25 reading, and you come out there now with a $4,000 bill for an initiation. You know, when you just was coming in to see if you and your girlfriend were going to get back together. Okay, there are techniques used by some of these people, not all. And these are the things that, like I said, you should look out for. That one of the greatest tools that are used is not only isolation and what we'll call affection smothering, where you get all this, we love you, we love you, we love you. But you'll find that repetition is a key piece to mind control. And I want you to picture and imagine for a moment when you're told to chant, right? Like I think one of the earlier shows, I shared the Hare Krishna chant, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare, you know, right? But the repetition, now of course, as many of you know, that Hare Krishnas are considered a cult by many as well. I'm not saying that, but that's what some folks have said. But again, I really don't have a big issue with cults, so I have to kind of pre-qualify my statements as that. I have an issue with oppressive leadership or oppressive folks within cults who are trying to subdue and repress a person's spiritual advancement. That's a very dangerous thing to do. So not only am I giving you this a warning for all the listeners who are currently looking at different places to join or this or that, but also for those leaders or those future leaders. Mind control, though you can make some money and you can get people who you may like into your bed and you can get a level of notoriety, ultimately you're going to have to deal with that when you go before the scales of Ma'at. And this is not an end time thing. You go before the scales of Ma'at. Every time you astral travel, you're going to find that you won't be sleeping well at night. You're going to find that situations that you've knocked out of balance will be rebalanced in your life. Don't want that. Sometimes we wonder, why all these school shootings and killings, happen all over. And I would tell you guys to do this, especially when you find out these mass murders in movie theaters and schools and things like that. Do a little research in those areas. You'll find that, especially like, for instance, the Sandy killings in Connecticut, there was mass killings of the natives in that area. I think there were 26 people killed in that killing. It were like thousands of people killed there. So it may not happen this year or next year, but there's always a rebalancing that takes place. Now, for those of you who want to try to contact me and am I saying that those killings were justified? I'm not saying anything about the killings. What I'm talking about is energy. Okay. And if you create a certain karmic responsibility in some place, it's going to be held accountable in that same space. And it may come back in a way that you're not ready for. So don't try to control people, right? So, again, repetition is used highly. You'll find in techniques of brainwashing, as is isolated, even what we'll call sometimes diet. Your diet is really brought into question. What they try to do is basically create a totally different world for you. They create a new set of taboos for you that you never had before, that maybe weren't even an issue before. But now you have a new set of taboos. You have no privacy. That's one of the key things. You're never really given time or space to logically evaluate what you're involved in. So you might go somewhere and from the first day they yank you in and they reject all of your old doctrine and everything that you've been taught before, and they deprive you of sleep. You stay tired because they're constantly calling you, well, come on, you're coming out. You'll find that confession is also stressed highly. Tell us everything about you, because you need to break down your ego. You need to not be so pompous, and you need to share what's going on with you. Your dress codes may also be changed. There typically is some form of financial commitment, because that's what it really is about at the end of the day. There's a lot of browbeating as it pertains to the secular world. Oh, look at what they're doing here. Look at what they're doing there. They need, right? The end to that one. But of course, and we have subliminal communication that's done a lot. There's a technique that not only that lawyers use, but that also that judges use, and it's a technique of rhythmic speaking that I think it's around 60 to 72 BPMs, beats per minute. That's what that means. And if you say a succession of words in a monotone fashion at that rhythm, then what will happen is it starts to program the brain a certain way. Now, of course, on a bigger level, we have MK Ultra. Many know about that, and if you don't, look up MK Ultra. And in that, the government used certain psychedelic drugs in order to manipulate the minds of participants, and some knowing and some unknowing participants. But also, it's a good documentary I want you all to check out. The name of it is The Chemical Effeminization and Emasculation of Men. The reason I'm pointing to it is because it deals with, again, things that can affect our disposition. I know there's a lot that I crammed into a small time here, and we'll be expanding on this again in the future. And just so you all know, we will be expanding behind further than our 30-minute to 45-minute slot. I've been slowly getting people who are coming forth who want to be a part of the show and part of the show's staff. And for those of you who are listening who are interested, please definitely reach out. And once that happens and I have a bit more support, I will be probably doing maybe 2 to 3 shows every 7-day period, and they will be longer shows as well. Before you go, 2 movies I want you to check out. The movie Network came out in 1976, and I also want you to check out Harrison Bergeron. Harrison Bergeron and Network. And we will, of course, continue our discussion on brainwashing and mind control. Until next week, next strong, I am Yuya Assaan-ANU. Peace.